Please be seated. The court is now back in session. The floor is now given again to the Deputy Co-Prosecutor to put further questions to the witness. You may proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to inform the Chamber now that we'll need 15 additional minutes to cover all the subjects we have earmarked. This is justified by the various interruptions on torture and the pleadings or objections that appeared rather to be look rather like pleadings. I would like to inform the Chamber of this request now.
Yes. Do you wish to extend the time this afternoon?
Non, le délai supplémentaire sera...
No. The additional time I'm requesting would be for tomorrow morning, 15 minutes before the civil party co-lawyers take 30 minutes to examine the witness. Thank you.
Merci. Alors pour commencer...
Thank you. For a start, I recall that we talked about the instructions of Deutsch and your superiors witness, and they told you that you are not supposed to have any feelings for the enemies you're interrogating and that you had to be absolutely firm. With your leave, Mr. President, I would like to have screened an extract of the same video we saw a while ago, E3/2330R. Between 42 minutes 46 seconds and 43 minutes 33 seconds. It is also a portion in which this witness is talking about torture in that film by Ritipan.
Yes, you may do that, and every unit personnel, please show that video clip on screen.
Các thua tuần cam cao đóคือของจัดหาวคู่เขาเหมือนเงินการพิจารณาเอาไว้คือเงินน่าจะนวดล้วนนั่งตัวเลือกมั่งคือถ้ามันคิดปีอายุชีวิตคือดิถ้าเคยอายุชีวิตเนี่ยตัวโดยจีสัตว์จีเทียดอย่างให้การเลือกได้ทั่วตัวหนึ่งการมันคือเงินจัดมวยถ้าตบคู่กับบ้านแล้วเหมือนอ้อยได้ทั้งใบมันอ้อยเชียงตัวđấyคือถ้าเงินต่างจัดต่างได้เต้าต่างอ้อสอบเนี่ยมั้งการทั่วตัวการมั้งให้
Dans cet extrait...
In this video clip from that film, Witness, you state specifically that you didn't think about the life of the enemy you interrogated, but that you saw that person as an animal. Was it Deutsch, your superior, who told you that you didn't have to see the enemy you were interrogating as human beings?
It was Deutsch who taught us, who gave us such instructions, that we had to be cruel, we had to be arrogant, and that we should not think of or had any pity toward prisoners, and that we had to be absolute in striking the enemy.
Durant les interrogatoires...
During the interrogations, witness, did you apply rules of discipline that the prisoners had to abide by. These are referred to as the rules of Santebal. And if yes, what were those rules?
But
In general, the rules forbid prisoner from assaulting, from protesting. However, prisoners were kept in small cells and no such incident ever happened.
Parmi ces règles, y avait-il également
Those rules also include the rule that they had to answer questions directly without straying away from the questions.
មានឃើញដាក់
Yes, it was displayed in the building prison. However, it was not displayed at my unit location.
Que voulez-vous dire? Je n'ai pas bien compris.
What did you mean? I didn't quite understand your answer.
D'accord, je retire ce que j'ai dit, c'était une mauvaise interprétation.
In that case, I will draw what I said. It was a poor interpretation. Were the prisoners also forbidden to make any noise, be it during interrogations or while they were in the cells in which they were detained?
Yes, prisoners were prohibited from speaking loudly or from shouting to one another.
Lors des interrogatoires,
During the interrogations, when a prisoner violated those rules, for instance, if he or she shouted while being maltreated, were there any sanctions meted out to the prisoner in such cases?
Any prisoner who violated the regulations, the punishment is to shut them up by putting a cloth over his mouth.
est-ce que les règles prévoyaient également
Did the rules also provide that they be struck or beaten or subjected to electric shocks if they didn't follow the rules?
បាទ
Yes, they were prohibited from shouting. However, sometimes when they were being beaten, they shouted. However, the room where they were being beaten had the door and windows locked and closed, so the sound could not go outside the room.
Est-ce que le fait de garder
Was keeping prisoners in total silence apart from when they were being interrogated during their detention at S21? Deliberate measures on the part of Deutsch or the cadres with a view to weakening the resilience of those prisoners?
That was a measure from Deutsch that prisoners should not talk to one another or to make any bodily gesture to one another.
Est-ce que Deutsch et vos supérieurs recommandaient...
Did Deutsch and your superiors also recommend that you humiliate or insult the prisoners?
During the interrogation, we were allowed to humiliate or scold the prisoners.
Est-ce que Deutsch a jamais parlé...
Did Deutsch ever talk about another technique which consisted in asking the prisoners interrogated at S21 to pay tribute to objects or images of dogs? That is, to worship objects or images of dogs.
Yes, that was the case. During the political study session, an image of dog was used, and the prisoners were instructed to pay homage to the image of the dog.
Est-ce que c'était uniquement pour humilier le prisonnier ou il y avait...
Was that solely with a view to humiliating the prisoners, or there was another purpose behind the use of those images of dogs that had to be paid tribute to?
Yes, the purpose was to humiliate the prisoner, and that they should confess. And this is also to degrade the value of the prisoner, as the prisoner had to respect the image of the dog.
Il y a également une explication.
There is another explanation that I would like to read out, and it is an extract of the cadre of an S21 E3 833 00242259 in English, in Khmer 0077925. So there's 3 zeros at the beginning, first of all. So it's 000779925, and in French it is 00373113, dated the 28th of May 1978. I will read out that extract.
Grand 1. Au sujet de l'interrogatoire...
1. Regarding the interrogation of enemies who have just been brought in. Subparagraph 1. Order them to salute statues of 2 dogs, because it is a kind of question. It is a political symbol. 1 dog is equal to the American imperialists, and the other dog is equal to the Vietnamese who swallow up territory. We ask them to salute them in order to destabilize them, first and foremost, because immediately after their arrest, they claim that they were 90% revolutionaries. If they salute the 2 dogs properly, it means that they recognize their treason, their treacherous acts. And further down, if they refuse, don't beat them immediately. Give them a minute, and after that, order them to say that they served those dogs, and to give the year and in what organization they did so. End of quote, free translation. I would like you to react to this. Were the images of dogs also used to represent certain types of enemies, such as the American imperialists and Vietnamese?
That was what Deutsche prepared, although I did not understand the full detail. An image of dog was used for prisoners to pay homage to, in order to degrade the value of the prisoner and that they would confess.
J'en viens aux différents types.
I'd like us to talk about different types of acts of physical violence committed against prisoners when they did not spontaneously confess, or which involved recourse to the methods referred to as cold methods. You talked about slashes, you talked about electrocution, you talked of the use of plastic bags to suffocate the detainees. I would like us to look at one or the other of those techniques regarding slashes with sticks, whips, or branches of trees. Was that kind of ill treatment the most common one used?
Yes, these techniques were regularly used. Councillor Copper, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. President. I was in time on my feet. I object to this question, as I objected earlier as well. The questions should be limited to those interrogations during which this witness was present or in which he participated. He's being asked questions in general about the interrogations that took place in S21. There were interrogations taking place in a special prison. He never visited that prison. In total, as I mentioned at one of the hearings earlier, there seemed to be about 4,300 confessions, most likely the equivalent of the same number of interrogations. He is constantly being asked to give far-reaching statements or evidence as to what happened during interrogations taken or participated in by others. In addition to this, he said that he was a member of the so-called chewing unit. He was not a member of the so-called hot unit. So he seems to be offering evidence which is not based on his own eyewitness observations.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, if I may respond, I think the witness has understood all the questions and he understands that those questions have to do with his experience as an interrogator. First and foremost, because he observed interrogations by others, because he himself interrogated the detainees, and because he received instructions and orders by telephone or during training sessions regarding such violent treatment. I do not know why would you talk of the special presence of the witness. I don't see why we should focus on that specifically. That is why I would like to proceed with my questions, Mr. President.
The objection by Councillor for Nunchi, that is Councillor Copper, is overruled, and the question is permissible, as the Chamber also wants to hear the response from the witness.
Correction by the interpreter. The co-prosecutor meant special prison, not special presence.
Please repeat your question.
En fait, je vais passer la...
In fact, I'll proceed to the next question because you have already answered the question and the objection was made immediately after your answer. Following the use of lashes, with branches and sticks. The prisoners you interrogated or other prisoners you may have heard of, that some prisoners sustain serious injuries or infections.
Of course, when prisoners was beaten with whips, they have wounds and scars on their body and their backs. Sometimes the wound would last for several months.
Étant donné le risque
In view of the risk of infection and the risk that such treatment would affect the health of prisoners, were you instructed at any point in time to resort to other forms of violence that did not entail the kinds of treatments that caused the prisoners to sustain open wounds?
There was no other different forms of tortures, as it might be more risky than the few techniques that we use towards those prisoners.
Je suis pas sûr d'avoir tout à fait compris, donc
I am not sure I completely understood your answer. It may be a problem of interpretation. I will read out what you told the co-investigating judges. E379, and the page in French is 001615552 001615 00145695. Let me quote what you stated regarding torture. Initially, no one told us much, but thereafter we were asked to use plastic bags, electrocution to avoid wounds on the back, sores all over the body. The problem of sticking pins on the nails was secondary. We had to do whatever was necessary to extort responses. Part of it was free translation because it was not properly translated. So my question to you was whether you were asked to use techniques such as the simulation of suffocation using plastic bags and electrocution to avoid inflicting open wounds on the backs of prisoners.
But
Yes, that statement is correct, and I stand by that statement.
lorsque, sur ordre de vos supérieurs,
When, on the orders of your superiors, you had to resort to the electrocution of prisoners interrogated, did prisoners sometimes faint under such treatment?
Allow me to clarify regarding the electric shock. In fact, we did not use electricity from the electricity cable as we use in our current residence. At that time, we used electricity generated from a desk phone, that is an old American desk phone, and the energy from that electric shock also sometimes makes the prisoners unconscious.
est-ce que c'était un type de torture qui
Was this type of torture effective? Did the electrocution make the prisoners to confess immediately?
តែលើហ្នឹងគឺ
On the matter of electrocution, some prisoners confess, while others did not. And some prisoners who did not confess, sometimes they were taken out and executed. So it does not mean electrocuting a prisoner was a successful means of extracting the confession.
Concernant l'utilisation du...
Regarding the use of plastic bags, did Deutsch or your superiors tell you for how long you had to keep the plastic bag tightly closed on the head of the prisoners to prevent death resulting from such treatment?
ក្បាលហ្នឹងគឺ
It depended on the real situation. If we saw that the prisoner actually suffocated and could not breathe, then we will remove the plastic bag. And if not, then we continue to tighten the bag. And the duration varied.
Avez-vous jamais utilisé des pièges?
Did you ever use traps used for trapping animals to extort confessions from the detainees during interrogations?
No, I never used this form of torture.
Alors on a beaucoup parlé de ces...
There's been much talk of such techniques of torture. There was the use of psychological methods and tricks. They used physical forms of coercion and violence. What were the techniques that generally caused the prisoners to succumb? Was it the technical methods that forced the prisoners to confess, or all of the different methods and different forms of violence, whether we're talking of psychological or physical violence, that forced the prisoners to succumb? This is a difficult question. Did you observe anything along these lines?
I cannot say which techniques that would make the prisoner confess immediately. It varied. Sometimes this technique was more effective than that techniques, but it varied.
Est-ce que vous avez appris par vos supérieurs?
Did you learn from your superiors that in some cases, and I'm not talking of you in particular, did they talk of cases of prisoners who died after interrogators used violent methods against them? Did you learn anything in that regard?
Yes, there was. I never saw it actually, but during the study session, Dutch gave an example of this interrogator or that interrogator who mistreated a prisoner, and as a consequence, that prisoner died. And sometimes another example he would raise was that a prisoner actually burned the productive organ of a prisoner, and that this kind of method should not be used.
Est-ce que les interrogateurs...
Did the interrogator who caused the death of a prisoner during the interrogation, such as the one who burnt the genitals of another prisoner? Were those interrogators sanctioned, or they continue to work as interrogators?
The prisoner who tortured, the interrogator who tortured a prisoner by burning his genital was later arrested and detained, and after that, that example was raised by Dutch, so that it was kind of a reprimand to interrogators not to use that technique.
When you believed that the interrogation was completed and that you had received the full confessions, what were you expected to do exactly? What kind of information did you have to, or what kind of documents did you have to deliver to your superiors?
After I received the full confession, I reported to those in charge of making copies of documents, and I sent them to Dutch. And if Dutch had not returned any feedback to us, and then we would go and bring in other prisoners for interrogation. And if there were any particular aspect that he still wanted us to interrogate the prisoner, and then we would bring the prisoners back for further interrogation.
Dans les documents.
In the documents that you would deliver, were there different kinds of documents? Were there typed documents? Were there handwritten documents? And furthermore, did you also provide a summary of the confessions to your superiors?
Talking about the confession and the signed the confession with signature, I would then type writing, and I would make sure that there was no single word missing in the typing, and then the report would be sent further to the superior.
Donc,
well, let me be a bit more concise for the second part of the question. So did you have to draw up a summary of the confessions of the prisoners on top of course, relaying the full confessions?
I did not summarize it. I sent the full confession. There was no summarized confession version. Each report usually had 50 to 60 pages. Rather, between 30 and 40 pages.
Was there a list of all of the person's accomplices at the end of the confessions?
In the report, I put the name of the interrogators and the name of the prisoners. And then sign it.
I would like to provide you with an example of a confession which you signed. It's document E3/1549. These are the confessions of Eng Meng Hien, Eng E-N-G, Eng Meng M-E-N-G, Hiem H-E-A-N-G, Elias Chon, C-H-O-N, who was the head of the power plant of the Ministry of Energy. Mr. President, I would like to provide a colored copy of certain pages of these confessions to the witness.
President, you may proceed.
Alors on trouve la signature.
So here we can see the signature of someone by the name of Prak Khan in Khmer on page 00174394. And if you turn the pages, witness, I believe that it's on page 3 that we see your signature. These are not the full confessions, these are just a few pages. And in the Khmer version at page 00174434, we see that as well. That's rather towards the end. In French, it's on page 00965739, and as well as 00965779. In English, it's on page 3. That is to say 00769-685. And at the end of the translated document before the list as well. Witness, can you please look at the signature next to the name Prakon? Is that your signature on this document?
Yeah, it is my signature. But Eng Min Hien Elias Chon prepared the confession, and I cannot recall all the details.
Est-ce que vous vous souvenez en gros?
Do you basically remember what was held against this person who was working for the Ministry of Energy?
President, Mr. Witness, please hold on, and the floor is given to Counsel Antakushe.
I apologize, but I must object here. Because apparently the co-prosecutor is focusing on what was held against the person who was interrogated, but based on what the witness said regarding the way he obtained confessions, or the way that he managed to know how that person had been arrested, depended only on what that person said following the interrogation. So necessarily, if we look at what was held against the person concerned, necessarily we're dealing with the content of the confession that was obtained under torture or under violence and duress. So I must therefore object to the question. Response, yes, I agree. It was a bit clumsy on my part, so I'll put another question to the witness. So do you remember if it was necessary to resort to violence to obtain confessions from this person?
Yes, there were the uses of violence.
Alors il y a une section qui est...
Well, there's a section called Summary in the pages which I provided to you. It's on Khmer page 00174393 and 94. and on page 4, probably, which I gave to you, that is to say 00174432. In French, it's on pages 0096, 57, 38, and 39. And I'm not sure I have the English ERN, or in any case, there are not very many pages in English. So there is a section called Summary. So do you remember anything about this? Does this refresh your memory regarding the fact that there was a section, a unit, that would summarize the confessions of the prisoner who was being interrogated?
I
only recalled after I have seen this document, because things have happened long time ago and I cannot recall everything. So what I gave in earlier testimony and now maybe different from each other.
Bien, dans la...
Well, in the copy I gave to you, I did not select a list of people who were involved, but I have another confession here, E3/8650. These are the confessions of Chorn, C-H-O-R-N, Meng, M-A-I-N-G, Elias Yang, Y-A-N-G, who was the secretary of Sector 105 in the Northeast Zone. These are confessions dated 4 January 1979, and it's specified at the end that these are incomplete confessions. So, Mr. President, may I provide some of the pages of this document, of these confessions, to the witness? Thank you.
President, you may proceed.
Alors tout d'abord à la 4e page.
First of all, on the 4th page of among the pages I gave to you, there's the same signature as in the previous confession. I don't have the Khmer page number, but in French it's 00763691, and in English 00752850. So this is the end of the confession. Lawyer, it's on the 4th page among the pages I gave to you. So my first question is, do you see this signature on this document, and is that your signature there where there is a blue line?
Alors en Khmer, je crois que j'ai trouvé.
I think I found the Khmer ERN 00254529.
Yes, it is my signature.
À la page qui suit.
On the following page, there are 3 or 4 pages of lists called lists of people who were implicated in the Chun Meng's treacherous activity account. Can you please look at this list? Lawyer, you can show this list to him. It's in the following pages. This list that appears at the end of the confession, is it a list that the interrogator, that is to say yourself, drew up? on the basis of the person's confessions.
President, please, Mr. Witness, please observe the microphone. You gave the answer when the microphone is operational.
បាទបញ្ជីនេះគឺខ្ញុំ
Witness, yes, I drew up the list because I was instructed to list all the names of the people whom were implicated by the prisoner.
Voilà, j'en ai terminé avec ce.
Well, I'm done with this document, Mr. Witness. You can put it aside. And I'm going to ask you to listen to the following question. Did you ever receive orders from Doik, or from Chan, or from Tit, your superior, regarding the content of the confessions, and in particular the fact that some names of leaders in democratic Cambodia should not appear in the confessions, that these names could not be quoted in or listed among the list of accomplices? Did you ever receive orders of that nature? That's to say that there were certain leaders, certain senior leaders, whose names could not appear in the confessions.
I cannot fully understand your question. Please repeat it.
Yes, I just showed you the list that was annexed to one of the confessions that you had extorted, and there are numerous names on that list. So did Doik or any of your superiors tell you that there are names of senior leaders in the party which should never appear in the confessions and in the annexed lists? That is to say that it was not acceptable for a prisoner to mention these names.
There were no such cases.
Alors, je voudrais parler.
Well, now I would like to speak about the blood sampling, because you spoke about this in your WRIs as well as before this chamber about 6 or 7 years ago. Can you tell us what you saw concerning blood that was taken out of prisoners at S21?
Talking about the taking of blood out of prisoners, as I have already testified earlier, I myself witnessed the taking of blood out of prisoner. It was Medic 3 who lived in a house near the front gate of Tul Slang. It was a low house. It was a bit to the north of the main entrance into Tul Slang compound. When I took prisoners to be kept there at 11 at night time, and when I walked back, I heard the sound rather, and I witnessed about 10 prisoners whose blood had already been withdrawn. And those prisoners fell down near the fence, and then new prisoners were brought in for their bloods to be withdrawn. So I witnessed this incident with my own eyes.
Est-ce que vous avez...
Did you know back then, or did you ever learn, if prisoners whose blood had been drawn were prisoners who had been interrogated previous to that? If you don't know the answer, of course you can say, I don't know.
រឿងនេះខ្ញុំអត់កំណត់បានថាបូម
I am not sure whether the prisoner had already been interrogated or not.
Et d'après ce que vous avez vu,
And based on what you saw, what happened to the people whose blood had been drawn after all this was over? Did they survive? Did they die? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
For those prisoners whose blood had been drawn, they were nearly died, but the medic carried them and placed them aside, and then brought in new prisoners for their blood to be drawn. And then those prisoners whose blood had been drawn, they became very weak and nearly died, and then they would be placed aside again.
Je voudrais montrer...
I would like to show to the witness, Mr. President, document E3/2164. With your leave, Mr. President, this is an S21 list titled the names of the prisoners of the blood drawing unit, and it's dated 25 October 1977.
Yes, your request is granted.
Voilà, sur la première...
On the first page in the 3 languages, we see the title, started to say the names of the prisoners of this blood drawing unit of 25 October 1977. So their names are provided, and there are 5 names. I'm going to read them out. Tatsaran, Simseng, Ninsaran, Ni Ne Chia, and Smon Aw. And it's specified as well that they come from S21D, and that their entry date at S21 is 21 October 1977. And regarding their position, these are all people who belong to Regiment 152. Do you know any of these former workers at S21 who belonged to Regiment 152? Do these 5 names ring a bell, Mr. Witness?
I do not know any one of them. I mean, in this name list, and I never met them either.
Alors, je vais vous demander dans un...
I'm going to ask you to turn the page, and we'll be dealing with something completely different. And there's a table on the second page that lists the S-21 staff dated 25 October 1977. And it is stated that the total of remaining staff was 980, knowing that 5 people of Regiment 152 had been considered as exiting, and these are probably the same people that we find on page 1. But in any case, we note on this list as well that there are 325 prisoners who are coming from the northeast. Do you know why there were so many cadres and combatants from the northwest corrects the interpreter, at S-21 at the end of 1977?
As I said earlier, that in 1977-78 there were increasing number of prisoners to S-21, and because of the internal breaking, there were so many prisoners that there were not enough space in the prison for them. Trucks brought them in daytime and nighttime until the 7th January 1979. I would like to say that in 1977-78 there were many people brought in from the northwest, the north, and from other zones. Some of them were not brought directly into the prison, but instead sent straight away to Chiang Ai. So that was based on the information I received from guards.
Très bien.
Fine. I would like to start dealing with the last topic, or one of the last topics during the 5 last minutes remaining. This is the topic of the Vietnamese prisoners. Do you know if they were Vietnamese prisoners at S-21 between 76 and 79?
Et est-ce qu'il y en avait?
And were they already Vietnamese prisoners when you were a guard, that is to say outside? Or was it only when you were an interrogator that they arrived?
It happened in 1977-78 when there were many prisoners brought in, and those prisoners included civilians and soldiers, and they were brought in along with their spouse and children. They were not sent straight to the prison, but they were ordered to sit down in front of building A and B, and there was an interpreter that Duch and Chan arranged for him to interpret from Vietnamese into Khmer and vice versa. They prepare a note on paper and then read out, and the whole incident was filmed and shown to the staff.
Among the interpreters assisting John, in particular to interrogate these Vietnamese prisoners, was there a prisoner among them by the name of Pan, P-H-A-N, Ten, Tan, T-H-A-N, and Chan, C-H-A-N.
ដូចមិនមាន
Tachan was a mechanic and a cook working in the backyard kitchen hall. It was a different person who prepared the note for the reading when the Vietnamese prisoners were brought in. It was his close associate who did the interpretation. It was not Chan.
Et qui a
And who would bring the Vietnamese prisoners to S-21? Do they come by S-21 trucks, or do they come in trucks from other units, in particular from the military divisions?
I did not know about this matter because I was based inside the compound, so I had no ideas of where those trucks came from. I only knew about the prisoners inside the compound. President, thank you, Mr. Witness. It is now convenient time for the adjournment. The chamber will resume its hearing tomorrow, Thursday 28 April 2016 at 9 o'clock. And tomorrow we hear the testimony of this witness. And there may be a reserve witness. Parties, please be informed about this. The chamber would like to thank Mr. Prakhon. Your testimony has not come to a conclusion yet. Therefore, you are invited to come back again tomorrow. And the chamber also wishes to thank Duty Counsel Momrati. And we also invite you to come back tomorrow. Court officers, rather security personnel, are instructed to bring Khieu Sampon and Nuon Jie back to the detention facility and have them returned to the courtroom tomorrow morning before 9. The court now is adjourned.